put it to so there's a supervision report that your supervisor does, and it's got your level 5. Look, that's looking like it. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. So I've amended that to include. That comes from your supervisor. I think you've been working with a supervisor. Your supervisor has to sign that off, which is what you would have done. Actually, people who did level 6 had to do that. So yeah, I mean, you can also use one of the use one of the forms just to say that you've met regularly over a period of X amount of time. In your journals, you may very well be keeping a note of really interesting group supervision. We all fell out. We all disagreed about X, Y, and Z or whatever. But you could talk about one of the major issues that emerges for you. In fact, I think it's already happening. Around when you together you talk about, is that allowed or is it not allowed? It's already happening if you're talking about it with your group.
One thing that I became also more conscious of this last 1 year or so was how accessible am I as a therapist to diverse background of people, because I feel that will bring more depth into me as a therapist and my experience.
Yeah.
So accessibility as a practitioner.
That's beautiful. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And accessibility, again, this is something that maybe, well, it comes under the things of what we think about as an independent practitioner. Could a wheelchair user get into my practice room? That would be one. What do I say to, I don't know, transgender clients? What am I saying in my appearance, in my attitude? Yeah. What am I saying to, I don't know, people of a different faith? What am I saying, to men or women? Yeah.
In the last point which I brought into us, their group as well. So I have a holistic practice now with this element of counseling, not so much of psychotherapy, but the counseling, but the element of psychotherapy automatically kind of is very fluid. It's a huge spectrum. So I did bring it in and I sort of mentioned that, is it right, is it wrong? Because there is no conflict of interest. It's actually making the practice more holistic. And I think we sort of spoke about it very superficially, but it's definitely something that can be brought into research or needs to be clarified, because there's so many of boundaries and rules and there's over. So unless you push those boundaries, you can't progress. And that was one thing that I would very much like to bring out in the discussion.
I think that's a really important point, isn't it? And a real aspect of our ongoing practice, where for me what becomes really important at times like that, shall I say, is we just keep asking questions. We just keep asking questions, and those questions may be around, and maybe it requires me to really go deep inside. What's my agenda here? What is my agenda in this? Is there a therapeutic purpose to my actions? And that requires a lot of deep self-reflection. And so one of the things that we'll be really working with very strongly, because it's really important when you're an independent practitioner, is my capacity to be self-reflective. Yeah. My capacity to keep asking the difficult questions. And there's always three words that I always think is great when I go, oh no, you shouldn't do that. No, absolutely not. And those three words. Is that so? Let's just pause and ponder that. Yeah. Is that so? Why would you do that? What's that about? Can you see, when we start to ask questions, then we can become less dogmatic and maybe enter into more, into the real ethical ground.
Maybe the burden of responsibility becomes heavier when you are on your own and you have to make decisions, especially where boundary issues are concerned. Because maybe as a therapist, I don't feel I'm ready for that kind of holistic approach.
Yeah.
And my visit to my supervisor becomes much more frequent. I feel I lean on her more because I'm not clear about maintaining boundaries and the ethics and the responsibility of holding a client and issues related to boundaries, especially.
Well, maybe there's even a bit of a research question emerging for you. Like here around, where is my ground in relation to these difficult matters? Where is my ground? When it comes to these very, very unclear aspects of practice. The more I work in the field, the less I become aware of like things being so clear, even though we have a code of practice that says you do not do this, you do not do that, you do not do the other. It's actually when we start to kind of edge a little bit closer, to that hazy ground, that where it's often really, really rich. As a supervisor with my clients or with my supervisees, I have one maxim to them: I don't care what you're doing, bring it in. I don't care what it is, bring it in. Yeah. So one of my supervisees, a man who had just been going through a very tricky breakup with his wife. He started to fall in love with a client. Yeah. Now some people would go, stop, do not go any further, And so we worked with that. We worked with that edge. Yeah. And there are others who would say, take it slowly. It's not like I trusted him that he wouldn't kind of do anything without speaking about it to me beforehand. But what happened, when we started to enter into that field, was we were able to discern in some ways, his deep care for his client. She benefited hugely from him really going to the edges with her, by loving her, in a way that, was so healing. But he also needed to strap himself to the mast a little bit, because he had his own story here. But it was in the room. We were able to work with it. He didn't have to say, I better not tell Janet because she'll report me. Because of course, as soon as things go underground, it becomes a shadow, as we would say in Jungian language. It becomes a shadow, and then it doesn't become accessible to us. So what happens? We act on it. And so we have all these strict rules that say you mustn't do it. and yet still people do. And I think there's something about our inability at times to walk that really, it's like trying to stay in between these two lines. Whoa, on that edge. Like, what am I going to do? Stay with it, stay with it. Yeah? Ground yourself, stay with it. Yeah? And lo and behold, lots of interesting things emerges from it. There's a lovely book that is really challenging for therapists on being on that edge, by somebody called, I think it's John Hall, spelled Haule. And he wrote a book called The Love Cure. He was a Jungian. And it's a challenge to us because what he says is things like, we try and sanitize love in the therapy room, by calling it erotic transference, which is what we do, don't we? Like if there's stuff in the room, we sanitize it, whereas what we can say is that actually it's in the room, let's use it. That doesn't mean to say you act in ways that are harmful, but you do keep asking those difficult questions.
Jan, I felt that where I have experienced this love with my client, be it male, female, girl, boy, older man, older woman, that love that a therapist feels, or even a person feels for another person, that human, that laced with humanity. I felt that I've had best results once that has come. And the therapeutic relationship has lasted much longer.
But we're also exampling, if we can bear it, our capacity to stand in that profound space. It's like, I can bear this. That's what we're saying. But it takes a lot of holding for us to do that. That's all I'm saying, is that it's when we come into this space, and start to get real with each other, it becomes much more important. That bit around love in the therapy room, depending on what you feel about these things, ultimately love is the most important thing we have, we could argue. It's like it's the primal thing. When we're born, and often our psyches get determined by how much love we either receive or are able to give. That's the whole thing around attachment and bonding. And
Many
so
times they do come in with that feeling. Clients, they are looking for attachment, and they don't have it outside. And here we are sitting there very matter of fact, being in our position of this therapy. So actually we are depriving them of that attachment in this place also, where the thought maybe is going to happen.
Exactly. But this takes us into a really scary territory, doesn't it? This is what as an independent practitioner, you've got this potential richness here, but can you stand your ground in it? Can you bear it?
Because there's a roller coaster going to be there then, with the client, and if you're okay with that roller coaster.
This is the art now. This is when we move into the art of relationship. This is when we really move into it. And chiefly the most important person in all of that is you and your capacity to bear it. It really is. And it can be beautiful. I had one client who I worked with for years, really loved her. She had such early wounding, and after about 5 years she came in and she just cried, and she just said, Jan, the thing is you let me love you. that's really important. Yeah. It's like I could say, oh no, no, I'm a therapist, we don't actually do that, you know. But when, like, do you get how important that is? I've had, I'm not advocating, kind of things, but it's a bit around when things are, when it comes to this ethical stuff, it isn't always straightforward. And as I say, I'm not advocating you do stuff, but one of my peer supervision colleagues, several years ago, had a client who was really, kind of had such a complex picture, almost all her bones were so fragile through her anorexia and so on. Had such a conflicted relationship with her mother, and she needed to go into hospital, and she wouldn't, and had nobody to go with her. My colleague took her to hospital, and she took her home with her. For 2 days. Now my colleague shared that with us and said, I know I'm not supposed to, but honestly, Jan, it was the right thing to do. And our little peer group said, we support you. And that's what we did.
Because that is where the support group has to be able to understand that there are these little diversities that come on that straight path that you travel upon. Otherwise it's a no, you can't do it.
Well, I think that's the edge that I'm really inviting us to look at, and I'm certainly, I really want to reiterate, I am not advocating taking clients home with us. I'm not advocating that at all. I mean, I think that was an extraordinary case, really, where that kind of happened.
It happens so often, isn't it? It's like I just sitting here thinking of a recent client, young woman, very, very disturbed. And I had said to her the time before, if we make an appointment at this time, it's probably going to be very late for you because you got to take then a Kareem home or so. She said, no problem. So then the day came, and then she messaged and said, yeah, I actually don't feel so good to travel so late. I know she lives not too far from where I am, right, my house. And I was very tempted to just, because she was she really needed support, and I was very tempted to say to her, like, don't worry, like, I'll drop you home. I didn't, I made the choice not to, but it's like those ethical dilemmas, I think, come so, for me at least, they come very regular actually. What do you do then? How do you act on them?
Well, it's beautiful when we can share them with each other, to help us structure our thinking on these things, A similar one, a supervisee of mine, about 3 weeks ago, actually rang me to say, I just need to talk this through with you. And so a woman she worked with arrived drunk. And so my supervisee said, I don't know whether I did the right thing or not, but I said to her at the end, I understand there's probably all reasons why you've come drunk, but I want you to leave your car keys here. I'll call you a taxi, if you like, but I want you to leave your car keys here. In fact, I'm going to insist on leaving your car keys here. Okay? And she said to me, I don't know whether that was right or not. And was that right? Because she was then really angry with me. Or at least the next time she came, she was really angry. Oh, and the other dilemma was that she wouldn't accept a taxi, so the woman was going to walk home. Right. Well, there's a good little dilemma for us, isn't there? Like, what do you do there?
Or even
it is-
somebody who comes in who's been drinking, right? He comes in because he's got he's an alcoholic, right? And he wants help to start drinking that. But then he comes in and he's had 4 or 5 beers.
Well, let's hold. I mean, there's a couple of things here, isn't there? Like I mean, I don't necessarily want us to go down there. We can do these dilemmas in a little moment. But you know, with that one, well, let's go back to the woman who took, you know, who insisted the client left her car keys. You know, was that the right thing to do? Well, in that moment, I said I think that was a really good way of you being a concerned citizen. Yeah, utilising your role as a concerned citizen. We have that in the UK, like where as a concerned citizen you can act, but as a concerned citizen, that sounded like a helpful thing to do. You know, and then you know you can then work with the kind of fallout of that. But you know that's a bit of a hazy ground, isn't it? You're going to say something, Shaz.
And in here, it would also be the health or the life of that particular client if they were to drive and have an accident and so on.
Yeah.
So would there still be a question as to whether the therapist did the right thing, other than the concerned citizen? The safety of the client is also paramount,
Yeah.
whether suicidal or whatever. Then you do the necessary things that have to be done. So in this particular case,
That could be one. That
so
could be
even
one.
driving her home
Yeah.
and dropping her with the keys over there. So I don't know if these are the areas which are very grey,
Yeah.
and yet to me they're very clear
Yeah.
from my perspective. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, let's stay in that lovely place of not knowing, because another scenario, which is a bit like the one that Anita gave, you know, was another supervisee whose client came, and he'd been smoking dope. Yeah. So he arrived, and actually, what happened with my supervisee there was, we also then ended up spending time noticing what that triggered for her as an individual. That actually she didn't like dope smoking, drinking or stuff. You know, like it triggered something in her personal story. Yeah. Which was not being present, you know, a whole bunch of things, yeah. So it's that hazy ground, isn't it? The key bit that we do is we just keep asking the questions. Yeah.
But what I meant to ask was, Jan, that if an intoxicated client comes, they are not in a rational space to benefit from therapy in any case. I was very clear, I thought that it's a no-no. You can easily refuse. But when Anita brought up the person who might be an alcoholic, there it makes sense then to put it in a contract maybe initially that if she feels he or she is heavily intoxicated at that time, she can send them back. You know, something like that, because to me, it would be probably not fair for the client or for me. You know, that's just something I was thinking.
Yeah, and so I look at it differently already.
I'm saying it makes a lot of sense, Anita.
I was
I'm saying
really-
it makes a lot of sense.
I mean, but that's where the ethical dilemma comes in, because you're taught in the course that says somebody comes in intoxicated, and like, what is intoxication in the first place, right? Is it indeed like, if you drink 3-4 beers, you come to me, are you still present for me? Or maybe you're not present for me.
That
Like
would
for
be
me,
the
there
therapist's
is,
call.
for
That's
me,
what I'm
it's a
talking about.
lot of grey area. There are indeed people who like, they smoke a joint after they come from work. That means that I'm not going to see them anymore. No. Is I get very much it's a balance. I don't think, and that is I think what we're talking about, that really like it's on the edge. But then I think it takes a lot of just reflection and just how do we look at it? Where do
Yeah, I
we
mean,
stand? At least that's what it would be.
the person who is not intoxicated will be the judge then. You see, you being the therapist will then decide. That's what I'm asking and
That's
clarifying
kind
for
of a
myself.
judgment call.
But there is
Yeah.
no judgment, you see.
Well, I mean, the dope smoking client would say to his therapist, how dare you determine how clear I am and I'm not? You know, like how dare you make that assumption?
That's it.
It's a really, I mean, it's just really interesting, isn't it? You know, and then that raises the question of, you know, you know, especially when it comes to contracting, how many no's do I have in my contract?
Yeah, I think if there are too many, you kind of.
Yeah, it's interesting,
Put them
isn't
off,
it?
yeah.
I mean, I'm not giving you any answers to this. I'm just plopping things in to go.
Sometimes it's a personal safety issue also for a woman and a man to
Right,
be in the
right.
same room, and you don't have security or staff, and you have a client who is, you know, in a certain state of mind.
Yeah.
So you have to assess the kind of risk you're ready to take as a person, as a woman or a man, or, you know, especially as a woman in our society. It's very, it's a,
And kind of just leading on to that, I feel like, you know, what you said about our personal stories, how much they play into this.
Yeah.
Because so much of this is subjective, and the subjectivity comes in from our personal stories. But additionally, I'm still staying with that sentence you said about your peer supervision, and how, although you said we support you, and that line, I feel like, is just the amount of compassion that goes into that, and what it must have been like for your peer to receive that validation. Like, okay, yeah, and how much moral kind of conflict there is a lot of times as therapists when we're making those choices, that this feels right, but we're not 100% sure. So we're also doubting ourselves, and what we talked about, compassion fatigue, and just that support that you get from your peers, and how it stops that compassion fatigue, or at least alleviates it.
And even that question came up when she was saying that, can we do that? And the thought that you just wrote, is that so? When the peer group says, you can't do this. That conflict that comes, and then probably that question is a very interesting question. Is that so? And why do you all think it's not supposed to be? Maybe somebody to throw in the peer supervision.
I'd like to share an experience with one of my clients. So he's a hash addict, and basically probably the most wounded person I've ever met so far. I'm still working on him. So it started with when so he would never come intoxicated, but I was aware of the addiction playing its part on his body, on his mind. It's there everywhere. Having said that, most important thing is, for me, initially it was, to convince him about hash. Because hash is something, because the addiction was really bad. It still is. And I was working on that, and it was around 6th or 7th session. It was very regular, and there was a sliding scale to that. And I tried to accommodate him in all the possible way I can. And I got a message from him one night, and it was quite suicidal. Lots of stuff which go over there, was that he's just planning something, really bad. And that's where I panicked, and then I kept replying, and then I kept checking on him, and somehow that moment passed. And then I did take it to peer supervision with one of my friends over here, and we discussed about, and she convinced me that, listen, if he wanted to do something, he would have done it by now. Somehow he has. So somehow I overcame the panic that I was in at that time. And after that, my sessions just turned towards him and not his hash. Because I felt it was very important to not bring in something that he somehow doesn't want. And it was very important to just go through the rules and just take it as it is. Even if he's, he's not capable to really process things, but still, I realized that it's important to just let it go. And they ignored it, although I know how bad it is.
Thank you. That's a really nice kind of story of what happens when we don't, But who knows, ever what the answer is, but you've raised something really important which comes in a different way, when we're independent, around risk assessment. And you might want to think about that in many different ways, around where I work, when I work. Do I say I will work with certain groups of people and not other groups of people? All of which is fine, by the way. If that's part of your risk assessment work. And do I have the resources to support me in that work? Might be another part of your risk assessment. Do I have the resources, and also, have I got the background and skills to do it?
For risk assessment, me and a number of my colleagues have been looking for good psychiatrists in Islamabad, because that's something we know when the client needs a psychiatrist, needs medication, or is having a very bad anxiety. When they need medicine, a problem that I and a few other people are facing is that we don't have a good psychiatrist that we can go to and speak to and have a communication with the client.
Right.
So that is a big problem that I see as a risk assessment that we're facing.
So it might be useful kind of talking with others around how we might,
We have been, but no, everybody seems to be looking for
this magic psychiatrist who's relational and good and
yes, and can keep up with us,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
when the client comes back,
Yeah.
we need someone to also communicate with us.
I face one issue a lot in my sessions is the fact that, again, like you said, how it works for your country. In our country, medicines can be given to you without prescription. And there's a lot of malpractice happening in the medical area, where practitioners are actually just handing over anti-anxiety pills and whatnot to them, just by the, whatever, and they generally are coming to you already, they're taking like probably 2 or 3, somebody's on Xanax, Lexotan and all these things, just to talk about it like nothing. And of course there's anxiety there, all that sitting there on your end. But this struggle sometimes sort of has this conflict, which I realized was my own thing, because I'm very anti-medicine and I feel don't suppress it, talk about it, but also knowing that they don't want to face the frustration of going through that process of feeling the anxiety, so best is to suppress it, and then they're doing it. That is another issue that comes in. Some of them will just say, please tell us what medicine should we take. Because over here, the psychotherapist, the counselor, they don't have that idea. People who don't have an idea will come and say doctor, they call me a doctor, then I have to explain to them, look, I'm not a doctor, this is what I am. But then this is what you do, so can you give me medicine? And then this whole thing about the medicine, the push and pull, that struggle sometimes becomes an issue that they need it and I'm not able to give it, so should I not just give them a number or say please go to a psychiatrist or go to a psychologist for this assessment, all this thing happens in independent practice a lot. Where just spur of the moment you have to make decisions till you actually go to your supervisor and do your supervision. So I think that clarity in your head that what is my value when you said, so yes.
And our own feelings about it. I'll tell a story about that in a moment, but I can see that Shaisa's got something to say.
When you said there's no good psychiatrist, I think there's no liaison between psychiatrists, counselors and psychologists. And we need to accept the fact that I'm not the best counselor or psychotherapist. And likewise, the psychiatrist doesn't know who's available and so on. So unless a team develops and kind of their conferences or meetings together, we're never going to be able to get there. Fortunately, therapy works. We do have psychologists, we do have a psychiatrist, and we just accept each other and take the support of those available.
The one we used to have someone good in Islamabad who I now am still in touch with, but he's got his own thing going, so he's coaching clients and And now, actually, even then I was sending people to him, and now he's just, I don't know, I think he's left down, not answering. Yeah, but you're right, we need a communication.
There has to be a communication set
Well,
up.
maybe that's again one of the things around sort of peer supervision. But did we put? Yeah, well, I guess with the sort of referrals, but there's something in there around the network.
Teamwork.
Yeah.
Yes.
Team of
Finding
specialists.
networks of people and organisations. At the little centre I have in Westbury, now it's really grown. So now we have people who do a bit of Tai Chi, somebody does a bit of something else, and we don't have a psychiatrist on board. But it's, the focus is on well-being. But I wanted to share a story about because it's about my prejudice in relation to. I wear a slightly different hat when I go into a hospital. As chaplain, I'm chaplain to the psychiatric unit. And one of the men there, I formed a really good relationship with him. He was super depressed, didn't want to live, was very, very clear, that he wanted to take his life. He had very good reasons for kind of not wanting to do it. And he just said to me, Jan, I'm sick of their platitudes. It's not okay. I don't want to be here. And so, my thing was not around as chaplain. It was more about listening to his the deeper cry from the soul almost. And he and I had this wonderful sort of few weeks of, I felt like I really got to know him. In fact, I presented him at a conference because I got to know his real deep feeling self through music. Because weekly he would say to me, X music really expresses to me whatever. And the first time he did it, it was by this composer, British composer Vaughan Williams, who I didn't know, but my neighbour is really good on music. So I said, have you got any Vaughan Williams? So I listened to it and I went, wow, gosh, that really speaks. And then the following 3 weeks, the same thing happened, and he'd tell me music. And I was thinking, this system is just really rubbish. He's very clear. His life is over. He doesn't want to live. And I was kind of, like my presentation was around, we really have to really listen to people, to patients, to clients. Anyway, they did section him, and he was made to undergo forced, ECT, electrotherapy, which I thought was horrendous. I went in 2 weeks later. It bloody worked. It bloody worked. It was that was my response, and we were able to engage on a, whoa, this, with that kind of disturbance missing. I then met a very different man, who was then talking about going out and. Part of his, he worked in a museum, and he'd just turned 60 and felt he would never get a job again. He'd been made redundant. He really didn't see any point to his life. Now we were able to sort of talk about, well, with all your music, maybe you could set up a music appreciation group, or just tune into the things that he could do. But that was my response, which was like, this is awful, this system that's, forcibly making this treatment on him. Bloody worked. And that, so that was me, go and eat your hat, woman. I completely throw my hands up there. So I was wrong. I was wrong. I think that, I need to look further beyond. So that's in response to that. And I'm sure that in many, many cases, it's just really not. Like there are many cases where there's over-medication. I see so many patients at the unit who keep coming back in, so they're not doing something right. Yeah. So there's that as well.
So they Michael said the revolving doors.
Yeah.
They should put revolving doors.
Yeah. And in his case, it was an open door. So, yeah, it's that bit, I think, when we kind of start to say, in my truth, it's like this. It's like,
It's,
Is that so?
I'm mindful of time. You ready for a break?
Yes.
What time do we normally do?
This is the time.
This is the time. Now is a good time. We can make it any time we like.
I mean, do we need to track? Nobody said anything to you what time they, because they usually serve snacks, that's why I'm.
Yeah, go and check. But that feels like, because what would be good, I mean, is maybe we can take this and some of the other stuff. In fact, maybe what we can do is look at, I'm giving you a bit of guided learning, a guided learning activity, which you will find in here. It's a small bit of paper like that. And this is my way of helping you to achieve criteria and go a bit deeper. One of the things I said that you could do is do these guided learning activities, and these guided learning activities are there just to help you focus. We did this on the supervision course, yeah, as a way of looking at specific issues. And this question will allow you to meet some of those tricky criteria. But in many ways, I would say to you, it's probably all on that sheet now.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've already studied it a little bit. But what I'd invite you to do, and you can do this, in your own time, and it doesn't have to be written, there doesn't have to be a lot of words. I'm suggesting maybe 1,000 words. That's, a couple of pages or so. But just to answer these 3 questions, so just to describe some of the differences in your practice from being agency focused to working independently. Yeah, we've already been doing that. Yeah, some of these things. What key areas of a professional framework are important to you as an independent practitioner? Well, maybe we can look at the professional frameworks a little bit more, but that would be something like the BACP framework. Have you got copies of it? You should have a copy of it. I've given you the latest one. And there's something in there around just noticing, is there anything in there that's important to you? Yeah, so just examples, several things, and this is just to encourage you to have a little read of it. But just to say, yeah, there's these 3 or 4 things that I particularly find really helpful. And the third question there is, why is peer supervision important as an independent practitioner? Yeah. So again, we've just been really beginning to address that here. So I'm just inviting you to put pen to paper. Yeah, you can do it under 3 headings. Yeah, and then you hand that in. And hopefully you will have at least those criteria then ticked off. Yeah. And while we're on the topic, did we find out about
yes,
it?
so we've got high tea, but that's going to be set up at 7.
Okay.
So I would suggest just a quick cup of tea right now, and then we can break at 7.
Great, no, that
A
will
little
fit
bit
longer.
longer.
Okay, well why don't we break now, and then I will show you then another bit of paperwork that you need to do in order to do the CPCAB stuff. Yeah, but I'll example it with this. All right. So let's break, and then if you have any questions afterwards, we can work with it. Ta-da. That was a great discussion. Did you feel energized? That was good material. Thank you.